all the books that I've read. That's a lot, actually. This one, this one, this one, this one, these ones. Ah! Okay, this one, these ones. Holy schneid. How do you guys take these photos? I see other booktubers take photos like this all the time, and I don't trust myself. This is so scary. Oh, hey guys, welcome back to another video. Hi, my name's Rachel, and this is my book club. Hello everybody, today I'm going to be going over my January and February wrap for books. So this is going to be just a little spoiler-free review of everything that I've read, kind of talking about, you know, what I thought of it. Maybe it'll help you decide if it's worth it for you. So I'm going to go in the order that I have read them so far. The first book that I read this year was In the Lives of Puppets by T.J. Klune. And this was my first T.J. Klune book. I've also seen, you know, other suggestions for House in the Cerulean Sea and some of his other books. So I started with this one. I loved this book. I did give this book 5 stars on Goodreads. I really enjoyed it. This is a Pinocchio retelling sci-fi story of Vic, who is the only human in his robot family. And upon his father's kidnapping, him and his little robot friends get to go on a journey to save him, and along the way he learns a lot about his own humanity, and this whole journey is him being able to define who he is as a person and what that means to him. And it hit really hard. I don't know if it's because of the fairy tale retelling, but I thought it was very romantic and very poetic. It was hilarious. I laughed out loud at this book. It was just written so well, and I think if you enjoy sci-fi and if you are okay with seeing those kind of fairy tale tropes retold, then you will really like this book. I thought it was phenomenal. I have really no notes for this book. It was perfectly executed as the story that it was meant to be, and it is the perfect length, and it is just a great book. The second book I read in 2024 was The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. And I did do a video on this book, and I did do a video on how absolutely angry I was after reading this. And I think I gave this book 4 stars overall. I would say overall it's a 3.5 or 4-star book for me. There was definitely some pretty significant flaws in my opinion with the writing. There was a couple of like minor inconsistencies that bothered me, and some things with the way the story moved that were not ideal. This book is about a human girl, Aurea, who joins this essentially, you know, Hunger Games tournament, last one alive, gets a wish from their goddess, the goddess of death. And in this universe that we're in, she lives in a kingdom of vampires where she is the only human, which obviously is an issue. And so she is fighting in this tournament essentially to win kind of strength and power, so that way she doesn't have to fear for her life every day, which is cool. And this is where we meet Rain, who is the love interest for this story. And things, of course, unfold from there as far as, you know, only one of them can survive, and then all of the political upheavals that are happening outside the story, and questioning the kind of person Aurea has taught herself to be might have been wrong this whole time. And I think by the end, this book has a really great payoff. It's just getting there can be kind of hard if you're not interested in the kind of superficial action that fills the pages up until that point. I said it in my video and I'll say it again. I've never been so angry to not be able to get into the second book right away, because I was like bashing my head into my desk by the time I got to the end of this. It was so good. And so I think this book is not for everybody, but for the people that it's for, it will rock your world. So I gave this book 4 stars overall. My third book of January and my third book of 2023 was Dune Messiah. So I did read the first book quite a while ago, but I have watched the movie a couple of times since then, and I found the series really easy to get back into, actually. I will say, if you've read the first Dune, but for some reason not the second one yet, I will say there were additional plot points in the second book that I really enjoyed, but I would say I wasn't really interested in this book for the story following Paul as much as I was the story following the princess, as much as following his sister and things like that. Also, his mom isn't really in this book, which is unfortunate because I like Lady Jessica. And so I have complicated feelings about this book because some parts of it were incredibly epic and awesome and super cool, like they are in the first Dune book. And I think there are some kind of emotional aspects of how we know our characters more intimately that is played out even better in this book than the first book. But there's also some things about this story that just did not get me, that I was just like, okay, whatever, like, can we move on? And so I think I gave this book 3 stars just because I was not amazed at certain aspects of the story like I would have liked. And the ending, although it makes sense, was not my favorite. I was not very satisfied with the ending, even though it plays a very specific purpose into the rest of the series. I just didn't like it. And so I couldn't really give it more than 3 stars because I just wasn't feeling it. So if you are like a big Dune fan, if you read the first one and you really liked it, it's definitely worth it to continue through the series, especially of what I've heard of the books that come after this. But just be warned that this book is very different than the first. So if you've read the first and nothing else, just be warned. The next book I read, also a January book for me, is the second book in the Crescent City series, House of Sky and Breath. And again, I did do a video on the entire Crescent City trilogy, so if you would like to see my opinions on that, you should watch that video because it's a lot more comprehensive. But this book was good. My opinion of the Crescent City trilogy overall is that it was good, but it's very long. It's very long. Each book is like 800 plus pages. So this is a huge time commitment, whether you read just the first one or the whole thing. It's a lot. I really enjoyed this. I was still in a really good point with this book. Certain aspects of it did disappoint me, where the story didn't go as quickly as I wanted it to. And again, because it's drawn out over so many pages, it was very entertaining. I am always gripped by something in a Sarah J. Maas book, and I think all of her books have flaws, certainly, but I am very emotionally attached to several of the characters in the series, and so I do have to read it, and I do enjoy it, at least for the characters that I really love. And then also usually there's a good story going on. There's usually something else to follow. What did I give this one? Did I give this book 4 stars? In retrospect, I think I might discount that to 3.5 or 4, because the story is good. It just, now that some time has passed, I think the glossiness has left my eyes. And this is a good book. Certainly, it is a very good book. I just think it has flaws, and it did not stand out to me as much as some of my other reads this year. So there's that for you. But of course, you're probably not going to read this unless you've also read a lot of other Sarah J. Maas. So you'll probably already know if this is your vibe or not. If you haven't read Sarah J. Maas, you're going to want to start with something other than Crescent City anyway. So there you go. Next up is Ink Blood Sister Scribe. And this is a YA novel that I heard really good things about. And after reading the Crescent City trilogy and diving into some, very heavy fantasy, sci-fi, adult reads, I decided to take a step back with just a single fantasy novel. This book was really good. I think I gave this one 4 stars also. The magic system in this book was really impressive to me. So in this book, we're following essentially the tale of 2 sisters who were born into a magical family, and their family owns this magical library of books, and no person can perform magic unless they have a magical spell to read. The one sister who stays home to protect her family's magical library, and the one sister who tries to leave to escape it. After their dad passes away, we go on this journey to figure out a lot of secrets about magic and about magical books that we didn't understand, and we meet other people who have more knowledge about that. And we're kind of just taking on this whole story of how essentially these 2 magical families are connected and how they can help each other from being stuck where they're at. And I really like this book. The magic system was incredibly compelling. It's not like any other magic system I've read before, where it's very much based on the magical books and less on a person's individual ability to cast magic or spells. And then you have other things that are included, like the way that magic sounds or the way that magic smells. And it's a really beautiful way to write about magic when it's so often, your ability to conjure energy to cast a spell. It's really different, and I really like that. And the story was a very satisfying read. There was good twists, and I think there's something about each character in this book that you can like as well. You know, they have their own kind of tropes and flaws that they follow, but in a very likable and endearing way. And so all in all, I would very much suggest this book. I think this is an incredibly fun YA fantasy read, and it is, again, the perfect length and just very enjoyable. So I think I gave this one 4 stars. Next, A Court of Frost and Starlight. And I'm sure, again, similar thing. This is later on in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series. If you want to watch my video on A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I'll put that link up. This is book 3.5. And the key about that is this book is kind of an interlude to the central series. As you can see, it's very short. The other books in the series are much, much, much longer. And it's essentially a Christmas special after the end of book 3 in the ACOTAR series. The end of book 3 in the ACOTAR series has a pretty defined ending. It very much feels like the end of a trilogy, and it's a very satisfying ending. So if you did not read past that, I totally get it. But this book was really good, actually. It was just very sweet. It was a nice little middle ground for the series. And then, of course, Sarah J. Maas released A Court of Silver Flames, which I have not read, and I'm sorry if you're a big Sarah J. Maas stan. I just haven't got there yet, okay? Again, if you like the series, if you like ACOTAR, you should read this. The only thing that you should be warned is that this is very much an interlude to the series. This is not a serious novel with heavy plot or anything. It is very much just following our characters and what they are up to after book 3, and a lot of the consequences that are happening after book 3. It is still very good. I found it really entertaining, and it was still really emotional. It's just not a central part of the series as a whole. So just remember that, because it's good as long as you keep that in mind. Christmas special. And of course, I don't want to talk about this book very much because I have read so much of this series, as you can see, so many pages that I don't want to talk about it anymore. But this book was good. At the end of the day, I liked this book. I can't deny it. It's just every time I look at this book and I pick it up and I see how gigantic it is and I hold it and it's so heavy, I just remember how burdened I was by the amount of pages that I had to read. This book, good. If you have, again, if you've started the Crescent City trilogy and you like it, it's worth it to finish it. This book just like taunts me with its length on a daily basis. It's the biggest book I own. It's like, a book should not be allowed to be this length. Still gave this 4 stars. Moving on. And next, I'm excited to talk about this one, Masters of Death by Olive Blake. Again, did do a video on this. If you're interested in watching it, please go watch it. I gave this book 5 stars. I am very hesitant. I will very easily give a book 4 stars because I am a pretty easy to please person when it comes to books. But I do try to save the more special and very exciting, awesome books for 5 stars. And this was a 5-star read for me. Masters of Death by Olive Blake. So this book follows our main character, Viola, as she is trying to sell a house. And this house is haunted. But luckily, she's a vampire, so she can see the ghost in this house to try and get rid of him. And with the help of her friends and with a new person she meets named Fox, who is meant to be a medium with death or something, she's basically trying to figure out how to get rid of this ghost out of her house. And we see her relationship build with her friends and the people around her, and they go through this whole crazy trial and tribulations of things that they did not expect to get dragged into, but they're messing with a ghost and therefore kind of messing with death and therefore kind of getting involved in things that they should not be getting involved in. I have never read Olive Blake before, and her prose is so unique that I will never forget certain passages out of this book. I will never forget the way the characters made me feel and how much I adored the romance aspects of this book. It's hard to explain without spoiling anything because I immediately just want to get into spoilers and tell you how much I love this book. But I would say that I would try to find a sample of this book. You know, go to your bookstore and read just the first chapter, because the biggest thing is getting past the way that Olive Blake structures her sentences. They are very long-winded, and a lot of people are not fans of the banter. It's very hit or miss if it's your style or not. And so that's definitely something I would maybe test the waters on before committing yourself to the whole book. But if you read the first few pages, if you read a chapter or two and you like it, then you will love the rest of it. Otherwise, this book is perfect, flawless. Nothing will ever beat this book for me, ever. This is my favorite book I've ever read. Okay, next. Another series book. I'm starting to realize that this might be a hard video because a lot of these books are several books into a series, but that's okay. So, Iron Gold. This is the 4th book in the Red Rising series. If you haven't read Red Rising, and you like sci-fi, then you should read Red Rising, and that's all I have to say about that. But this is the 4th book. It's been a very long time since I read the original trilogy for Red Rising, so I did have to Google a lot of names and family trees before getting into this to remember where I'm at. However, I liked this book. This book made me angry. This book made me very sad. This book was very much 3.5, 4 stars for me, just because it made me so sad that I almost didn't keep reading. This book follows Darrow after this whole war from the first trilogy, right? We have all these things that happen in the first trilogy of him rising up and trying to take everybody down, and now here we are, book 4. And it's very heavy. It is very heavy, and it's very serious. And the way that Pierce Brown writes his characters is very much that they are flawed, and it's very realistic. So as a reader, you watch these characters that you've fallen in love with over the first trilogy make dumb mistakes, and it's very angering. But it's very good. It's very good. And that's the worst part, is you see how, people make small mistakes, and how that has this ripple effect and causes all these other issues, where if they had just listened, then it would have been fine. But also they're trying to do what's right, so it's blah, blah, blah. Every character in the series is morally gray, and that's what makes the writing so good, is that every character has these flaws, and it makes it very understandable why the things are happening. But also, because we're following these people who are in positions of power, each decision they make has huge effects on the planets and the populations and cities of people around them. And it's very, very serious, and it was very heavy for me. And so I did decide to take a little bit of a break before reading the next one, but I'm getting there. I'm about ready. But 4 stars overall for the very strong emotions and just really great writing, honestly. So we're down to the last couple books. First Lie Wins. This is the first thriller book I have ever read. I would like to remind you all that I have just recently dove into my hobby of reading as an adult, and so this is the first thriller I've ever read. I finally decided that I like enough thriller movies that I should just try a book, and I did see one of my favorite YouTubers, Lexi, talk about this book a little bit, so I gave it a try, and I did like this book. I gave this book 3 stars. This book was good. It was entertaining, and it does exactly what it's meant to do. Even though it was a little bit predictable and not the most insane, crazy writing I've ever seen, it was very entertaining, and I wanted to keep reading, and I read it very fast because I liked it, and it was simple in a way that was very enjoyable. And again, this book has a point, and it has a specific story to tell, and it tells it, and it's good. This book isn't going to win any awards or anything, but it's good. And if you enjoy thrillers, then you should read this. If you take the storytelling of thrillers very seriously, maybe this is not for you. But as far as just looking for a nice light read that is a fun thriller, this fits that bill perfectly. And I think this is the perfect book for a lot of people who are looking for that vibe. So there you are. And after reading that, I did have to read I'm Glad My Mom Died. And I'm going to be releasing my video on this book almost exactly the same time I'm going to be releasing this one, so keep an eye out for that. This is the first memoir I've read as an adult. I'm really trying to expand my genres. I really am. This book was really good. It really surprised me, and I've always been really cynical about celebrity memoirs, just because I tend to think that a lot of people pick up the book just because they recognize the person on the cover, which is a totally valid reason to pick it up, but just something I've avoided. I don't know. It's just, I'm always really skeptical about these. But I did have one of my friends, she said she was going to read it, and she said I really should read it also for my channel. So I did. Same thing, this book is pretty short, so I figured what's the big deal? And it was really good, and it was insane. So this book essentially follows Jeanette McCurdy's journey through child stardom, as well as her experiences with abuse, addiction, and eating disorders. So if you are comfortable reading about those topics, then this book is definitely a good read for you. It is very moving, very powerful, and I think really speaks to people who have abusive and traumatic experiences with family members, because this plays into that very well, while also ensuring that you understand her innocence and her ignorance to the situation. And it was really good, and it was written surprisingly well for someone who was acting her whole life, I think. I don't know. I really liked it. And again, don't forget the trigger warnings. Those are important because they are very serious topics. But if you're okay with that, then this book is great. I gave it 4 stars. And my last book of February that I read was The Fury. And I bought this on Pango Books. I saw that it was on there for really cheap, so I figured, why not? We are following a narrator. Our narrator is telling us the story of this murder mystery. A celebrity and a bunch of her family and friends go to their little private island getaway when someone is mysteriously murdered. The way I see this is as if you took Nick Carraway narrating The Great Gatsby, but put it in a murder mystery. It has very similar vibes of rich people messing around and finding out. And I thought it was really good. If you can get into the narration, because the story is told fairly slow and the narrator spends a lot of time telling his own kind of anecdotes to build the story. So if you're comfortable with that slower pace leading up to the thrill of the whodunit, then this is the right book for you. But it does take quite a build up. So being able to get into the narration of the story is very key to if you will like this or not. And I will say, if you are a fan of this author, I have seen people say that they do not prefer this to some of his other books. So if you've read The Silent Patient and you really like that, I have heard that it is quite different. And that is the last book I read in February. So that is everything that I've read so far this year for January and February. If you have any other opinions on these books, please let me know. I want to know what your thoughts are. Leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content. Otherwise, thank you guys again for watching. Don't forget to add me on Goodreads so I can see what you're reading, and I'll see y'all next time.